The last time I was privileged to be your speaker here at Chelsea Community Church, I shared with you some of the writings of Jesuit Father Gregory Boyle, who runs a gang intervention program called Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. In his book, The Whole Language, The Power of Extravagant Tenderness, Boyle explains that with all those gang members around, many of whom were brutalized in childhood or in prison, and who have little recourse to healthy coping mechanisms, things can get quite tense and stressful at Homeboy, and never more than during the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Some staff had reached their breaking points. One of these was a woman named Lisa, who confided to Boyle, "I think I'm going to lose it." Boyle responded, No, you're not. You're going to gain it. And I don't mean gain weight from all the crap we've been eating on lockdown. You're going to gain a deeper anchor in love. You will gain something beautiful during this time. Watch for it. That's what grace is. God working through our lives to anchor us ever more deeply in love. Grace is God transforming us into divine beauty, the divine likeness. Today's reading from the Book of Wisdom reminds us that for those who seek her, wisdom hastens to make herself known in anticipation of their desire. Those who watch for her at dawn shall not be disappointed, for she will be found sitting at their gates. In other words, wisdom is generous, longing to give herself to us. Reflecting on this passage, Sister of St. Joseph Mary McGlone writes, "Wisdom is not so much an acquisition as it is a relationship of love. More than possessing it, it captures us. Understanding wisdom as a name for God, we realize that we may seek her, but she who embedded the desire in us longs even more to find and live in us." End of quote. I grew up in Southern California. Summers are hot and dry. If you fly into one of the airports, you'll look down and see that the dominant color of the landscape is tan, with maybe a little beige in there to break it up. When I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time at the beach, where all that tan in the form of sand finally gives way to the cooling green and blue waters of the ocean. When I first moved to the northeastern United States at the age of 22, I'd been told that autumns would enchant with their fiery colors enrobing the hills. Winters would be cold, and a strange substance known as snow would fall from the sky and blanket the ground. Springs would be longed for and dramatic. But I was completely unprepared for summer. I recall walking down a path in a park and feeling swallowed up by green. Green above me and below me, green on both sides of me. It was both awe-inspiring and anxiety-provoking until I got used to it. I felt as if at any moment a tree's leafy bough or a long lacy wisteria tendril was going to reach out, grab me, and reel me in. I still sometimes get that feeling when I'm out hiking in the summer. God's grace is like that. Even in our darkest, most barren days, we walk in paths lush, overgrowing with it. Of course it wants to grab us and reel us in. When we think we're going to lose it, as the saying goes, We've got it wrong. We're going to gain it. And it is a deeper anchor in love. Watch, said Greg Boyle. You will gain something beautiful during this time. Grace is the lowest hanging fruit on the nearest tree. This is all the more so when we are enduring any sort of suffering or disruptive event in our lives. Pandemic, anyone? Loss of a job? Death of a loved one? Broken relationship? The tree is closer still, and the fruit hangs yet lower. We haven't to reach for it, only to let it fall into our open hands. We can't see well in the darkness, but we can open our hands and expect it, expect the grace. Prayer is the spiritual equivalent of open, expectant hands. The psalmist cries out that his soul is as thirsty as earth that is parched, lifeless, and without water. My soul is thirsting for you, my God. I will call upon your name, and as with the riches of a banquet shall my soul be satisfied. Wisdom in the Bible, a personification of God, anticipates our desire. A wise Maryknoll priest friend once told me how he realized one day that grace is just there for the asking. For example, he recounted, God is love. One day I asked that love be a part of everything I do, and it was granted. Wait, it was granted? What an astonishing claim, so outrageous that I couldn't stifle a laugh. Then I remembered the humility of this man who had devoted his life to serving among some of the world's poorest people. He was simply stating a fact. It was granted. Love is a part of everything he does. In fact, he is anchored in love. In 2015, a dear friend of mine died of a brain tumor at the age of 55. At his funeral, his wife got up to speak. 20 years ago, she said, Joe and I stood at this same altar for our wedding. Joe leaned over and whispered to me, pay attention, Jean. It'll all be over in the blink of an eye. I had thought he was referring to the wedding, but now I realize he meant our years together. Pay attention, because the time, our precious, sacred time together, yes, those decades went by in the blink of an eye, end quote. In the past, I've shared with this congregation Mary Oliver's poem, The Summer Day, so I won't read it again, except for a couple of lines from it that seem especially pertinent to today's readings. I don't know exactly what prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last, and too soon? One of my favorite works by the artist Corita Kent, who created brilliant, face-saturated screen prints in the tradition of Andy Warhol, depicts a cluster of abstract objects. Are they hearts, tulips, birds taking flight, spirits winging their way toward heaven? Well, who knows? It's in the eye of a beholder. But in tiny script at the base of the cluster, these words appear. Be of love a little more careful than of anything. Anything. Pay attention. It'll all be over in the blink of an eye. Don't miss the grace that waits eagerly to fall into your hands. Watch for it. I don't envy the exegetes who have to interpret strange parable about the wise and foolish virgins or bridesmaids, the wedding attendants of Jesus' day. Jesus tells us that both the wise and foolish attendants fell asleep. None of us can avoid doing that, nor would we want to. Sleep itself is a gift laden with grace. Pay attention to sleep. But the wise were expectant. Their lamps were at the ready. I am no exegete, but I read this as a story about being available to grace. A kind of vulnerability to being reeled in, being at risk of capture by love. When we're hungry, we may not know where the kitchen is, but we'll find it all right just by following our noses. The feast lures us with its tantalizing aroma. We know not the day nor the hour, presumably of when our mortal lives will end, but we don't need to know if we're always hungry for the God of love. The feast is already in the here and now. Even conflict, from horrific and large scale, as in the current tragedy playing out in Israel-Palestine, to small and personal, like those most of us inevitably encounter in our daily lives, is fraught with life-giving grace. People talk about conflict as something to be resolved, a problem to obliterate so that we can move on to other things, which of course never quite happens. John Paul Lederach, the Mennonite sociologist who introduced the world to the concept of conflict transformation, explains that chaos and darkness are original to God's creation. And from those, God pulled order, light, and beauty, this dazzling universe. Moreover, any two people, no matter how close or compatible they are, will, as discrete beings, experience conflict between them. It's endemic to creation itself, and therefore grace lurks therein, calling us to communion with one another and with the one whose love pours forth in creation. Love cannot not create. Conflict is always an invitation to greater intimacy, says Lederach. The only sin is to ignore the invitation, to pass by or pass up the grace without partaking of it. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, a psychoanalyst and post-trauma specialist, wrote that in any dark time, there is a tendency to despair over how much is wrong or unmended in the world. Do not focus on that, she advises. Do not make yourself ill with overwhelm. Didn't you say you were a believer? Didn't you ask for grace? You have all the resources you need to ride any wave, to surface from any trough. Where I live now in Western New York, there is a lovely retreat center out in the countryside called Mount Irenaeus. A priest who lives there, Father Dan Riley, recently wrote a book called Franciscan Lectio, which is the practice of reading God's word in the wonders of the natural world, as well as in the events, both ordinary and extraordinary, of our daily lives. A passage from the book reads, "When Jesus sent his friends out into strange and new territory, he told them, 'Take nothing for your journey.' They learned more about what they were to do the more they committed themselves to his simple call. They discovered all that they needed along the way. Wisdom and grace were already right there, awaiting them." Thomas Merton, arguably the most important Catholic spiritual writer of the 20th century, who lived and taught among the Franciscans in Western New York before he became a Trappist monk, wrote that we have what we seek. It is there all the time. And if we give it time, it will make itself known to us. He further wrote, we must make the choices that enable us to fulfill the deepest capacities of our real selves. Make the choice to watch for grace. It's already there, and it's everywhere, in every situation, at every curve of your path. Pay attention. Be ready for it, vulnerable to it, at risk of it. To do so is to live in wisdom, anchored deeply in love. So those of you who have been coming to Chelsea Community Church for a long while know that it's my habit to go down into the aisle and invite your own reflections on the readings or on the thoughts I've shared. Here are a couple of, I should say too, I know some of you are on Zoom, and it sounds like it's possible for you to join us if you like. I should tell you that I have a little bit of trouble sometimes making out what people are saying on Zoom. It's like the words kind of all meld together. But if you speak slowly and distinctly and concisely, I hopefully will be able to make out what you're saying. I don't want you to feel excluded just because you're on Zoom. So, a couple of reflection questions. Can you think of a time when you grew personally, became a better person, or more of the person you want to be, at a time when you thought you might be losing it? When you feel like, another question, when you feel like you're losing it, what helps you to watch for the graces available in that experience? What helps you to anchor yourself in love, or to pay attention to ways God is active in the ups and downs of your life? So those are a couple reflection questions, or anything from the readings you'd like to share. I'll give you a minute, and then I'll come on down, and we'll do that.
Hi. Is this on? Yes, it is. Well, I'm just blown away by your message. I actually don't want to answer the two questions that you asked, but I just want to make a commentary. On the readings, I wondered how it was going to be possible to take the reading of wisdom, which I was really grateful to hear was a woman, and then the 12 bridegrooms, and the message in that reading to me was ultimately selfishness. Why didn't the ones who had the oil at least share a little? So it was really good for me to understand how you were able to say, to get back to the reading, how you connected that those wise ones were available for grace. And also, I'm so grateful that you're able to bring in Mary Oliver and Merton and all of these tremendous souls. And as for that priest that lives next door to you, if he's still alive, I really would love him to join us at Chelsea Community Church. I have a lot to say, but I wanted to thank you for a very interesting talk. Thank you.
Some of you might have heard this before. When my mother contracted lung cancer at 64, she had had a lifetime of smoking to stay thin, and she did. She was very active, and then at some point she was living her life attached to a nasogastric tube. And she would get up in the morning and string her way around the dining room chairs and then recline on a sofa. She had very little breath and gradually lost a lot of her senses, except her alertness. She was always alert. She received communion. She was a devout Catholic. She received communion from a sister who came to give it to her, and she kept saying, "I want to see the priest." And she would tell me, "The priest never comes. I get the nun." Sorry. And then I called up the rectory and said, "Why doesn't the priest come to see my mother?" And I was told he had meetings. I said, "What's his job?" And I just said, "I want him to get over to see my mother." And he did. And he apparently confused me with my mother because he said, "Why are you angry at God?" And my mother, who was reclining, I mean, she was skin and bones, really, and she raised herself up on her elbows, and she just looked at him in the eyes, and she said, "Hate God. God is getting me through this." And that stayed with me forever, because that was this incredible strength in her faith and in her understanding of what was helping her survive. And at the same time, you get these rough times in life, and you think that, well, that's going to get me through. And that connects me with my love for my mother and gratitude for her life. And also just, it connects me to her, at the same time connects me to a groundedness in a reality that God's going to get me through this, however it ends.
I bring you greetings from the Free Will Church of God in Christ, which is located in Brooklyn. I'm so really privileged to have the opportunity to come and to worship with you and also sharpen my tools. What a wonderful display of just womanhood at its peak, to have them minister to us. I just wanted to share this because I feel as I share it, I'm going to be healed. I look around here today, and what was it, maybe 3 years ago, no one was permitted to enter the building. And you never know how something can strike you. I did all right the first year. I said, "Oh, it's all right." And by the way, I didn't notice the year. I said, "Oh, we'll get together." But about the third year, as I re-enter the church doors, a lot had changed. A lot of things have changed. even the outside has changed. Things that we never thought would change. So I didn't know how to express it today. I'm just so very happy that the church doors are open and that women of excellence are ministering throughout our state and throughout the world. I just wanted to share that I got back in, but it's not the same, because the same God that cared for me and carried me through a time when there was no church door open is the same one who carries me now with the church open. So I just wanted to share, thank you so much for sharing your lives with me somehow. And so I really am grateful just to be here today.
We're grateful to have you. This is Wayne. You asked what ways that we can call up grace in situations. I guess one I use sometimes is I think of people who have blessed me with their grace, and some of you probably, many of you know, for instance, Jerry Scott, one of the most gracious people I ever met. I only saw him a few times, but each time I encountered him, he just had this presence of grace about him that was just remarkable, and I try to emulate that. And another thing I use at times is, it's become my practice to sing some song as a call to worship, and some of them really stick with me and help me rally some grace. And so I think of these songs. One of them in particular had a line, "Give us the courage to enter the song." And I try to think of these situations where you might encounter someone as entering into the song with them and finding that grace. Thank you. Oh, I guess unmute Paula Whitney.
I am unmuted. Wayne, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Well,
Sorry.
good afternoon, Dr. Mary. What a privilege to be able to talk to you today. I tend to race like a race car driver, so I'm going to take my time and speak clearly, articulately, and slowly. I'm just so grateful for the chance to speak to you. You have given me grace by the mere colors of your appearance today. Your eyes, which are God-given, your earrings, and your frock, which are chosen by you. Grace, that's grace to me. In a previous lifetime, I was a fashion designer, a costume designer for movies for both men and women. I'm very much taken by color. I often talk about the colors that are delivered to me in my home by the photographers in the sacred church. Like you, I am an MDiv wannabe. Like you, I had the privilege of preaching in this church a couple of weeks back about my horrendous experience in a New York hospital and a hellish nursing home. But that drew me closer to God because I talked about the riches in my life. Yeah, I've got 23 doctors and 20 disabilities, but I have, most important of all, God's grace. And I'm so thankful that I acknowledge it. And it's good to know that it's the low-hanging fruit. I thought I had to reach for it to the heavens, but there it is, waiting for me in the offing. That's all I have to say, Dr. Mary. What wonderful grace you've given me. I don't speak for the world. I'm speaking for Paula Whitney Best. The grace you have given me today, your mere appearance, colors, your words, wisdom and grace. Thank you. God's blessing be to you, my dear. God's blessing.
Thank you, Paula Whitney.
Did you want to say something, David?
Oh, no, I was just, do you want to say anything in response?
Oh, actually, you I kind of didn't need to respond. Everything just flowed out today. Everything was so profound. Did everyone talk who wanted to talk? Okay.
And if you want, you can continue over coffee after this as well. So now we'll collect our offerings. The usher will come forward.
I can do a prayer. I can
okay.
wrap with a prayer.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay, so let us pray. Holy wisdom, you who anchor us in love, we thank you for being with us in our moments of darkness and suffering. And we thank you for your grace, your gift to grow, for us to grow and be transformed into the beauty that you are, for sending us hymns, music, transparently gracious and good human beings who are all instruments of your life and grace to us. So we pray that you will rain your graces down upon a world so in need of your life-giving love. And help us all to be instruments of your grace and your love. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.